thank you so much for joining us at this year's VIFF. You've got a film in the festival, David Hockney at the Royal Academy. Can you tell us a bit about your film?
Sure. Well, it's been quite a long gestation period. We based a film about David Hockney on two major exhibitions that were in London and were huge successes. The first was in 2012, and then we waited a little while for the second exhibition, which was 2016. These were seen by 750,000 people in London, which is huge anyway, but for the Royal Academy was particularly successful. And it's a mark of just how popular David Hockney is. I chose not to make it a retrospective. I mean, I focused entirely on these two exhibitions, although there are some earlier works in there. Because for me, what's so motivational and so interesting is that this is a man who's now entered his 9th decade, and he is constantly searching for something new. He's always looking at new technologies, new ways of painting, new subject matter. And particularly the first exhibition in 2012, it's a stunning exhibition, and there's so much work done on iPads, multiple cameras. He's a very, very impressive artist. And for us, because we do a number of films about artists, to be honest, I think he's one of the few that you can genuinely claim as a great artist that people will still be talking about in 100 years' time, alongside the Rembrandts and the Goyas and the Leonardos.
Well, maybe just to dial it back a bit, for the uninitiated, in your own words, who is David Hockney?
Who is David Hockney? I think David Hockney is almost certainly the most popular British artist currently alive, certainly in the United Kingdom and plausibly around the world. He has been, he became known in the 60s, and initially for works done in the United Kingdom, then he went to Los Angeles. And at a time when a lot of artists were working in abstraction, he was a figurative artist. Some of his paintings, when I was at school, in my English lessons, not really aware of who David Hockney was, but there was a big picture on the wall, which was a David Hockney. I mean, he was everywhere. And he's continued I mean, his exhibitions sell out worldwide. In fact, one of the things that has struck me about him since I've got to know him a little bit is that he's always working on projects. He's always got an exhibition opening in Venice, opening in Paris, opening in Rio. The man never stops. A new book, for example. And as an artist, although he is very popular and very successful, again, what I like about him is he's constantly looking for something new. We've made so many films about artists, and previously at VIFF we've had films that we've made about composers. It is very interesting how, as artists, creative people get older, they do seem to have more time. They're freer with their creativity. It may be that they've found some kind of economic security. It may also be that they just don't care anymore. And the latter works of an artist like Goya, Rembrandt, Matisse, and David Hockney are often their best. I'll leave the audience to decide, but some of these artworks that are in the film are staggeringly good.
Well, you've mentioned that David Hockney's been very prolific throughout his career, and there's been other documentaries on David Hockney as well. What did you hope that your film would bring to the narrative about his life and his work? In the last 5 years, we've made 19 feature films about artists, and I'm sure there have been other films made about all of them. You can't be too worried about that. What you have to do is, what can we say afresh? Also, of course, you're always dealing with new audiences. There was a very good retrospective film made about Hockney 3 or 4 years ago. It doesn't matter how good it is, most people wouldn't have seen it. But what we decided to look at was specifically these two exhibitions, which, I mean, these exhibitions can take 5 years to put together. They didn't in this case for various reasons, but there's still an enormous amount of work. They last for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, then they're gone. So we've captured it. If you didn't see the exhibition at the Royal Academy in 2012, this is your chance. And if you didn't see the one in 2016, this is almost certainly your only chance. So part of it is just to show these exhibitions. What we also managed to secure were 3 interviews with him. And he's tremendously educated, tremendously affable. You know, he's a very pleasant person to be with. But it's also nice, I mean, obviously there are other films at VIFF that do this, but for us it was nice to be dealing with a living artist.
The other 18 artists that we've made films about are all sadly dead. So apart from the correspondence that you can quote from, we don't actually have them to interview. So that was also nice to try and get a sense from him what he was trying to achieve.
That was going to be my next question, because you have quite a career doing, the documentaries that you have with Beethoven, Van Gogh, Manet, but this is different because David Hockney's living.
Because he's alive, yeah.
What was the question that you were just burning to ask that obviously you couldn't have asked in any of your other films, but having a living artist to profile?
It's a real challenge. I mean, for 30 years, not entirely deliberately, but I have basically been making biographies. My very first film was a biography about the Dalai Lama of Tibet. And I've made about 130 arts films, not all of them, most of them are biographical, really. The classical composers biographical, Pele, Muhammad Ali. Where you always start is correspondence. That's the way into somebody. Now, with somebody that's alive, you can actually sit opposite them and ask them questions. I have made television films about contemporary artists, and sometimes their answers are not terribly revealing. But that's part of their personality, is to be slightly obscure. Hockney will talk about his art. I mean, like any interview, you have to be clever about it and construct your questions in the right way and make sure he's comfortable and so on and so forth. I think what I wanted to ask him, there wasn't really one burning question. Because I always have so many questions, because I'm just naturally curious. I did want to know what motivated him. I did want to know why he felt the need to use modern technologies. There's obviously questions about what brought him back to Yorkshire, because he was based in Los Angeles. It's part of getting older, but also there were some personal tragedies in his life, which influenced the move back to Yorkshire and then the artwork itself. The second exhibition, which is just portraits, the main question there is, how did you come to decide this particular formula? Each portrait is 3 days. It's a particular environment. The person has to look at David Hockney essentially and just sit still for 3 days. That's as much as he thought anyone could do. I'm just now making a film about Cézanne, where just the other day I was reading the letters where he talks about the person who came that he was painting. There were 115 sittings. One of the other advantages we had in this film, of course, is that we could actually talk to the sitter. Again, we could never do that. If only I could meet the girl with a pearl earring, or, La Gioconda. It's very interesting to talk to sitters, and one of the things that comes through the film is that for a sitter to be told, you now have to sit there for 3 days, you can't keep a face, you can't keep a particular look. So the look you might do for a photograph, the look you might do in a mirror, the look you might do you can't keep it. So people are actually seeing themselves in a way they don't normally see themselves. They have to get into a position, and basically they have to be completely relaxed for 3 days. And he doesn't really talk to you for 3 days. Afterwards, he's very convivial, but when he's painting, he's concentrating. So it's quite interesting from the point of view of the sitter. What position are you going to assume? What are you going to wear? How are you going to... And of course, one of the things that David Hockney says, kind of partly a joke, is that people these days, men don't dress up in suits so much. So there's so much is revealed in the way that we dress, the way that we sit. And that's part of in a sense, the 82 portraits are one artwork, but each one is so distinct. And even though we don't really know who the sitters are, mainly, everyone's different. And then, so the totality is very interesting.
Interesting. Well, as someone that has built a career on exhibition-based art films, I'm curious for you, what is the essence of the exhibition for you that is just most exciting, that you love to capture? What is the feeling of being in an exhibition that you hope is conveyed in your films?
The thing about exhibition on screen is that was born out of a frustration that all documentary filmmakers feel. It'll be a consistent theme of filmmakers here, and you'll have talked to some of them, which is that we can make the best film in the world, but if it's not seen by anybody, it's kind of a waste of time. I have felt more than once. I made a film about a music school in Angola. It was shown on television, but I did think to myself, I wonder if that 200,000 Canadian dollars or 250,000 Canadian dollars actually would have been better spent if I'd just given it to them. Because so few people get to see these films. There'll be some fantastic films here, which frankly will just not be seen. Despite the digital revolution, despite the change in cinema networks, it's a real problem to affect change, if that's what you're trying to do, or just influence people. Television has diminished, its appetite for documentaries is diminished. There's so many more challenges to getting people to see the film. So what we have deliberately built up is a network. I mean, Exhibition on Screen is now in 55 countries, in 1,500 cinemas. So the motivation behind that is I just want to share the joy of going to an exhibition. If I'm going to get a little bit more profound for a second,
Please.
I mean, I can turn on the news at any time and be struck by the kind of destructive capabilities of us, you, me, others. Whether it's some lunatic in Las Vegas or what's going on in Myanmar, wherever, there are so many examples of human destructiveness. But when I look at David by Michelangelo, or Lady with an Ermine by Leonardo, or so many other examples, I'm struck by what we are capable of as mammals, and it's certainly unique on this planet. It's probably unique anywhere. So when you have an exhibition, and when we're making films about exhibitions, we're there on our own after everyone else has gone home. You don't have just one of these masterpieces. You might have 20 or 30 or 50 or 100. And you just think, I don't know how. I mean, Monet, for example, the more you look at his work, you think, I don't know how he did it. Cézanne, I'm just working on Cézanne. He is the most extraordinary artist. So what we're trying to do is to share that. Part of that is by making a good film, which is all about storytelling. Every single film in this festival, it's either good or bad on the basis of how good they are at storytellers. Whether it's fiction, fact, animation, short, VR, it's all about storytelling. So we try to tell really good stories with our films. And then it's about distribution. But for me, and this is why obviously the relationship with galleries is very good, because we can preserve these exhibitions, go beyond the exhibition to show you a biography of the artist, and these films can be shown 5 years, for 10 years, indefinitely, one hopes.
That's great.
We'll see.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your motivations with us, and we wish you the best of luck with your film.
Thank you very much.